This is the Category 5.tv newsroom, covering the week's top tech stories with a slight Linux bias.
I'm Jeff Weston, filling in for Sasha Rickman, and here are the stories coming up this week. According to research published in Nature, a machine learning can help robots perform chemistry experiments faster than human scientists. Researchers have been exploring how algorithms can predict the outcome of chemical reactions for a while now, but the project goes one step further and actually uses a real robot to carry out some of the experiments. It doesn't look anything like what you'd imagine. There's no humanoid robot on wheels zipping around a lab or a mechanical arm swishing beakers of colorful liquid. Rather, it's a system that contains a series of pumps and reactors all attached to a mass spectrometer, a nuclear magnetic resonance spectrometer, and an infrared spectrometer. The pumps contain samples of chemicals to be mixed. The solution is then fed into reactor flasks and sent to all the different types of spectrometers to be analyzed. It's nothing too fancy, and most of the hard work is done by the machine learning algorithms, which are behind the robot. The system determines if a chemical reaction has occurred or not, scoring it at a 0 for non-reactive or a 1 for reactive. The machine studies the information from the different spectrometers to see if new molecules have been forged. The model was trained on 72 reactive and non-reactive mixtures from known chemical reactions classified by human chemists. A team of researchers from the University of Glasgow built a neural network and trained it on nearly 3,500 reactions. They flagged almost 600 to be held back for validation and then tested it on nearly 2,000 reactions. It's pretty accurate and can predict if a chemical reaction will take place about 86% of the time, according to the simulations. After this stage, the robot can then begin performing some of the reactions chosen by the algorithm. The system saves time and energy by helping the chemist discard pointless experiments that probably wouldn't result in anything useful. It can also give them hints to what reactions they should explore to find new molecules for drugs, dyes, or new materials. This is neat.
That's cool. I mean, think of the time-saving nature of something like that.
Absolutely. And as you add more chemicals to the mix, I mean, it was just 72, but if you expand that and say go 300, like exponential increase on the amount of reactions you could possibly have or not have. I mean, I know not long ago I was reading that they found a new, as a new mineral or a new... The scientists have...
I don't know, Jeff. The story is yours.
No, I know, but scientists have discovered something new recently. It's a new, like...
Aliens.
Something like that. But, you know, a story like this to have the computer, like, sitting there doing the work for you, I mean, you could be off doing other research while it runs the algorithms. I like
the approach that it doesn't have to create reactions in order to understand whether or not a reaction will occur.
Right.
Like, if I take, you know, if I'm artificial intelligence and I know that mixing blue with green or blue with yellow will create green, then I don't have to do it to know that.
Correct.
Right? So if I've got a mix of chemicals, I'm just going to know that, hey, if I mix these, it will do this. So then the scientists don't have to waste their time doing it. With 86% probability of being accurate, at least it allows them to skip over stuff that would otherwise be time consuming. I would imagine, like, if you're doing research,
oh, for sure,
the amount of time to just try things.
It makes me wonder, though, from a standpoint of recreation, because that's one of the principles of scientific models, is if you're going to do something, you need to be able to recreate the results.
Sure.
I'd be interested to see if a couple of different, you know, research facilities were using the exact same software, you know, starting it from ground zero, if the software would produce different results as far as the algorithms would go, or if you'd still get that same, you know, oh, this will react, this will not, because it says 86% accurate. So, you know, there is some variation that you could have. It'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And, you know, that's, you know, when you take that spin on it, you start to think, oh, well, it's not really that accurate. But really...
Hey, if I got 86% on a test at school, I'd be thrilled.
But think about, okay, if I have 1,000 tests to run as a scientist, if I've got to do all this stuff, to have it come back and say, oh, don't bother with that one, I'm pretty sure that that won't result in anything. To have the artificial intelligence come back and say that based on its own findings.
Right.
And it can work 24/7. It can be running tests and mixing things overnight so that when I come in the morning, it can say, oh, you know what, I don't think there's going to be a reaction to that, so don't bother. I can start working on things that
you know are going to have a reaction.
Or that I'm not sure. Or that the AI is not quite 100% sure on.
Right. Or maybe it comes back like, ooh, 17% chance that that it might have a reaction. You're like, it's within that margin of error. We better try it.
Exactly.
That's cool. It's funny. As I was reading the article, I was thinking, I could see them featuring this on the TV show Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Because it's all about, spectrometers and stuff when it comes to, some of the engineering stuff and the tests, and it'd be fun.
That's just a TV show, though.
I understand.
But this is reality, Jeff.
I know, but I'm saying
this is really
show.
It would be a thought starter for the writers.
Well, absolutely.
I'll let them know next time I'm talking to them.
Sounds good. All right. A prolific hacking group has struck again, this time stealing close to $1 million from Russia's PIR bank. The heist occurred on July 3rd, about 5 weeks after the sophisticated hackers first gained access to the bank's network by compromising a router used by a regional branch. The theft, which is conservatively estimated at about $910,000 US, is the latest achievement of a group who's being called the Money Taker Group, named after a piece of malware that they commonly use. While utilizing several sysadmin tools and custom malware, one of the earlier hacks of the Russian bank's internal network was initiated by gaining access to the home computer of one of its system admins. Now, first reported last November that members of the hack group had conducted 20 successful attacks on financial institutions and legal firms in the US, UK, and Russia at that time. In a follow-up, it was reported that Money Taker netted about $14 million in the hacks, 16 of which were carried out on US targets, 5 on Russian banks, and 1 on a banking software company in the UK. This is scary. You'd like to think that banks are secure.
You'd hope so.
But it was literally one computer.
And so, okay, they've compromised a router and they've compromised one of the admin's computers that had remote access. So then I start to think, okay, so they're using social engineering tactics. Like these folks, we think about hackers. Okay, let's just kind of think about a hacker for a second. And you think, okay, they're sitting in a dark room, they're on a computer, they're breaking into computers, they're hacking into computers, they're using code to break in.
But that wasn't the case here.
No, they're using social engineering tactics, which means, okay, Jeff is an administrator on some big corporate network, okay? Let's just pretend. Can you role play?
I can role play.
Okay. Your name is Francesca.
My name is Francesca, and I work at a big national bank.
She works at a big national bank. And while you're working there, you're overworked, you're tired, you're working 15-hour days, sometimes 18-hour days, and you're beat. And you're just like, okay, I want a weekend off. I'm going to put remote desktop on one of the computers at work. Then I'm going to go home, and I'm going to be able to remote into work so that I can do my work from home. Sounds great.
Yep.
Well, now, social engineering tactics, phone rings, and Francesca gets a call and says, we're calling from such and such. And somehow, through social engineering tactics, they've tricked Francesca into giving access to her computer.
Oh, no, I've been tricked.
Exactly. So now, while she's sleeping that night, presumably she sleeps.
Yes.
She's a hard worker. She's very diligent, but she has to get rest. 6 o'clock meeting. And so they get in there at 2 o'clock in the morning when the computer's idle and they see, oh, look at that. There's a VPN or a remote desktop protocol connection to work. Click on that. Oh.
We're in.
Oh. It's a login for the bank. And boom, boom, boom. They're in. And suddenly through social engineering tactics, they've tricked or somehow hacked in. Now the other side of
malware.
Well, malware is anything, like it could be remote access, remote administration software. It can be remote administration tools that are legitimately used by IT personnel in order to administer computers. When I'm fixing computers halfway across the country, I don't go there.
No, that's
I send them a file, they open it, and I've got access. So if you fall for receiving that file from someone who is not me, well, you're done.
Yep.
And if you've got access to things like work. Now, the other side of it was this router. Now, a router that sits on your network. So the ISP shows up and says, okay, we've got your new internet router. Here you go. We plug it in and you're up and going. You've got Wi-Fi. You've got access to the internet. People don't think much of it. And
then
then
always be updating the firmware.
The firmware is out of date by years. The passwords are possibly set to default passwords and things like that.
It's amazing how often that happens.
It's scary. I mean, you think that it doesn't, but it really does.
Yep.
So that's a whole other can of worms. But is it malware as in a hacker sitting at a computer coding something that gets into... Not necessarily. It can be them writing a code that goes out on the internet to all the IP addresses and finds routers that contain a certain signature.
Right.
Or websites that contain a certain signature that are on internal LAN.
Right.
That are hosted on the same network as the bank. The bank website.
What's sad about this story, though, is that the hacker group used a known malware program called Money Taker. And that's why the group's called Money Taker.
Sure.
So you would think if it's known, then any competent security network at a bank would be updating all of their software to watch for this.
But then if they if they blocked it, Jeff, wouldn't the attacker just say, is it Money Taker? It could be remote desktop. It could be log me in. It could be any number. It could be VNC. It could be SSH. It could be anything that in and of themselves are benign.
Right.
This router in and of itself is benign, but because it had exploits in it, they're able to crack into it and use it, because most routers are, you can now operate it on the network level and access other computers on the network.
That's right.
Open up ports on the firewall to redirect to all the computers so that you have remote desktop access to them, and blah, 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 and it goes on and on.
I am surprised we still get stories like this, though. You would think with all of the various issues that we've had over the years with hack attacks and all that kind of stuff, that
you think humans would wise up, Jeff?
You would think, but no, we're pretty dumb apparently.
Not dumb, just
negligent.
We like to fall into a bubble where things are benign. Like, we think that our router is benign.
Yeah.
We think that our smart connected devices are benign, and then we find out that that tracking watches have been mapping military bases in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like, these kinds of things, you think they're benign, but they can be used against us if we are not ultra careful and if we don't understand those technologies.
Case in point, autonomous cars.
He's going to go there, folks.
I'm going to go there. Just when we started to think autonomous vehicles were looking good, someone's developed a GPS spoofing device that can send them driving straight into oncoming traffic. Billions of people and a growing number of autonomous vehicles rely on mobile navigation services from Google, Uber, and others to provide real-time driving directions. A new proof-of-concept attack demonstrates how hackers could inconspicuously steer a targeted automobile to the wrong destination, or worse, endanger passengers by sending them down the wrong way on a one-way road. The attack starts with a $225 piece of hardware that's planted in or underneath the targeted vehicle that spoofs the radio signals used by civilian GPS services. It then uses algorithms to plot a fake ghost route that mimics the turn-by-turn navigation directions contained in the original route. Now, depending on the hacker's ultimate motivations, the attack could be used to divert an emergency vehicle or a specific passenger to an unintended location, or to follow an unsafe route. Passengers responsible for the device are thankfully not out to cause trouble. They're from Virginia Tech, which is China's University of Electronic Sciences and Technology, and Microsoft and Research. They wanted to demonstrate the vulnerabilities in our current GPS-driven infrastructure. They warned the threat becomes more realistic as car makers are adding autopilot features so that human drivers can be less involved or completely disengaged. The researchers propose several countermeasures. The one they say is the most promising in terms of its effectiveness and cost is computer vision techniques to cross-examine the physical world landmarks and street signs with digital maps. Given the widespread use of cameras and LiDAR, this protection could be put in place with software-level upgrades. I like this idea that they're able to get around it so quickly, and that the groups who have found this exploit by using this really cheap device are not using it for malicious purposes. I mean, you'd think
Yeah,
for
the
university,
ones who have unveiled it.
yeah.
Now is are there other devices out there?
Sure, it's a $225 piece of equipment. Like that's not hard to replicate.
Sure.
So, I mean, the fact that it's that simple to do,
That's it.
is scary. And it's in the story, it talked about with emergency vehicles, and I'm thinking,
That's a scary thought, Jeff.
absolutely. And imagine the damage that you could cause if you threw all of those on, say, fire trucks in a city.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got to get to this address because the building's burning. You're over here instead. Like, just a simple.
Yeah, and you like to you say, and again, it goes back to us thinking that things are benign, and you'd say, why would anyone do that? And then you hear some of the things that are in the news without getting into it, and realize there are people out there that would do that.
Sure.
And why? The question is why. There is no answer. It's a rhetorical question, but there are people out there that would do that kind of thing. And so how do we protect ourselves against that kind of thing? But by improving the technologies, and maybe just the technology providers for GPS satellites and things like that will look at this and say, oh dear, we need to make some changes. We need to implement some changes. And with autonomous vehicles, like, well, what about the cars that don't get the patch?
Right.
Or that don't use LiDAR in addition to satellite imagery and positioning and cameras?
Yeah. It's unfortunate that this kind of stuff becomes so prevalent the more we advance our tech. And I mean, it makes sense. Like, as we advance more, you're going to have more of these exploits. But it's like every time we make a leap forward, there's somebody who's out there to do something potentially horrible.
Yeah.
And I like to have faith in the human race. Slowly losing it. Like, there's some bad eggs out there.
We're fortunate that all of our viewers are wonderful people.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
So, we can't relate to that mindset. But again, it's back at hackers and what is the motivation behind the hack?
Yeah, that's
and
true.
what is the potential damage? I mean, it could start with something benign and then, like it is right now. And is it, somebody thinks, hey, this would be a really great way to rob a company by misleading all the cop cars, or who knows what could be done. But
that's now 2 stories in a row of kind of hackers that are just given a bad name to hackers. But not all hackers are bad. There are some good hackers out there.
No, there aren't.
Yeah, there are.
Come on, Jeff. Just give me one example. Just one.
Well, I've got one. So if you happen to think that all hackers are bad, think again as we look at a hardware hacker who has solved the issue of Amazon's Alexa devices. What if the user can't speak or hear? If voice is the future of computing, what about those who cannot speak or hear? That's the question posed by developer Abhishek Singh, the creator of an app that allows Amazon Alexa to respond to sign language. Love this.
Wow.
Singh's project uses a camera-based system to identify gestures and interpret them as text and speech. The developer says that future smart home devices should be designed to be inclusive for deaf users. The past few years have seen a rise in popularity of voice assistants run by Amazon, Google, and Apple. And in fact, a study by Smart Audio Report suggests that adaptation of smart speakers has exceeded that of smartphones and tablets in the US. But for the deaf community, a future where devices are increasingly controlled by voice, this poses many problems. Now, speech recognition typically has trouble being able to pick up the rhythms of deaf users, and a lack of hearing presents a clear challenge to communication with voice-based assistants. Now, Singh's project offers one potential solution: rigging Amazon's Alexa to respond to the text to American Sign Language. The developer trained an AI using machine learning platform TensorFlow, which involved repeatedly gesturing in front of a webcam to teach the system the basics of sign language. Once the system was able to respond to his hand movements, he connected it to Google's text-to-speech software to read the corresponding words aloud. The Amazon Echo reacts, and its voice response is automatically transcribed by the computer into text, which is read by the user. As a solution, it is a workaround with the laptop as an interpreter between the user and Alexa. But as Singh says, there's no reason that Amazon Show or any of the other camera and screen-based voice assistants couldn't build this functionality right in. Amazon has taken the hint and has announced that as of Monday, more Alexa users will have the option to turn on captions for Echo devices with a screen. Alexa captioning has previously been available for US owners of the Echo Show and Echo Spot. The company is now bringing the feature to users in the UK, as well as Germany, Japan, India, France, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Love finishing the news on a good news story.
That's cool.
This is so amazing.
Okay, I'll give you that. A hacker who is doing something for the good.
Absolutely. There's more than just Sing. But I love this. And I love that he said, I'm just going to deal with this myself with a webcam. Taught it sign language.
Unreal.
Like, it's amazing. So good. But what I wonder is, will they be able to take the programming and adopt it to, say, video feeds that have a sign language interpreter? You know how, like, you could watch, some...
Oh, like use that to translate?
Yeah, so you know, maybe you can't watch something that might be on TV, but it will translate it for you.
Yeah, I seem to recall Microsoft was trying to do something like that, but it wasn't very accurate. And I start to think about, how accurate is a system like Sing's, for example. But then you start to think about, okay, well, the English language. So to translate a video, for example, that has ASL embedded into the video, that would be, you'd have to, the AI, the interpreter would have to know and understand the language that is being presumably spoken.
Yes.
And that would be incredibly challenging. Now, you look at a device like a Alexa device. Even though it speaks the language, be it English or whatever language you've got it set to, the commands are very rudimentary.
Yes.
So they're preset. It's like Dr. Spatzo. It's like preset commands that you are speaking to the device and that it is speaking back, and it's generally pretty basic as far as language goes.
Yes, absolutely.
Alexa, what's the weather? Sorry, I didn't mean to set yours off. But those are the kinds of things. And then if it responds by text captioning, then it can say whatever it wants. But if my signing, and I can't sign, so I can't do it for you, but if my signing were to set it off with Alexa, what's the weather? And then the Google translator said that aloud, or the Google text-to-speech said that aloud, then it would be quite possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I like that.
It's cool. It's neat. I like that people do this stuff.
Very much so.
Good on you, hackers. Not the bank job.
Yeah, those ones are jerks.
That's right.
But those of you making things more accessible, we love you.
That's right.
Keep up the good work.
Big thanks to Roy W. Nash and our community of viewers for submitting stories to us this week. Thanks for watching the Category 5.tv newsroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe for all your tech news with a slight Linux bias. And for more free content, be sure to check out our website. From the Category 5.tv newsroom, I'm Jeff Weston, filling in for Sasha Rickman.
And I'm Robbie Ferguson.
Glad to have you here.
I'm glad I could be here to interject a few points. And I thank you for being here this week. I hope you had fun with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. I believe the whole crew's here next week. Are you here next week?
That's the plan.
I hope so. Sasha's going to be back from her vacation as well. I'll be here, and we've got a great show planned for you, so we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Bye.